Over to you now.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Abby. I am Communications and Finance Director at Stir to Action. I am joined by my colleague, Dan Woolley, who is Head of Fundraising with our co-op. So today we're going to just talk a little bit about what our bespoke support offer looks like and a little bit about the learning program. But just to first introduce Stir to Action. We're a workers' co-op that supports economic development around the UK. So we primarily focus on democratic businesses, community-led enterprises, local regeneration, and ensuring all of those are more diverse and representative in our local economies. We've been around for about 10 years, provided lots of support and training to many people around the UK and internationally as well. So we're really excited to be working with Big Local to provide you all with some support. Within our own team, we have a lot of skills and experience in fundraising and income generation from our previous roles, as also within the work that we do for our own organization. And yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing about all of your plans, what you guys are working on, and bringing all of those skills and expertise and sharing them with you in your communities. So as Helen mentioned, there are kind of two streams of the support that we're doing. There's the learning and events program, which I'll talk about in a few minutes in a little bit more detail, which starts in the new year. And then our bespoke service or bespoke support offer, which I'm going to hand over to Dan Woolley to tell you a little bit more about that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Abby. So hi, everyone. As Abby mentioned, I'm Dan. I'm the Head of Fundraising at Stir to Action. I've done quite a lot of fundraising with different organisations in the past, and indeed quite a lot of work with community organisations of all shapes and sizes. So that's why we're really keen to join the Big Local programme and deliver this support to you and your areas. So in terms of the menu of services and how we can help you, I think the first thing to say is that we really recognise that everyone's needs are going to be different. So the important thing is the first stage of any support that we offer will be about getting to know you. We're going to do this in two phases. So the first phase will be sitting down with you, whether it's an in-person meeting or a series of kind of Zoom meetings. We really want to find out what you need so we can shape our support to you. And it's really about you bringing anything to the table. I'll give you a very concise overview of where we think we might be able to offer support and this kind of support that may be most useful to you. And let me just run through these now. Just to mention that each area, if you apply, will have up to 5 days of support from us, and we can really mix the time across these different areas of support. So the first one is strategy. That's really looking at what is it that you need to fundraise or generate income for? How much money would you need? When would you need that money? Which sources of funding would be most appropriate, and who in your team is going to be part of the process? Who's going to work with us? Who is going to research grants? Who's going to write bids, etc., etc. And it's worth saying at this stage as well that we can help you with, we can be as close as you need us to be in terms of providing that support and even doing some of that work if it's really useful. So the second area is fundraising, looking for and applying for grant funding, and that'll cover everything from researching grants and funding opportunities, writing fundraising applications, and getting the budget right, because a lot of funders out there are really keen to make sure that the budgets are right. You know what's needed and you can communicate that clearly to the funder. That's very important. Look at crowdfunding. So Abby used to work at Crowdfunder. She can probably tell you more about that over time, but crowdfunding is a really great way for community organisations and community projects to get money from the people in local communities. So we'll talk a bit about what is crowdfunding. Some of you probably know, some of you don't, some of you, want a bit more detail. We'll explain how to give yourself the best chance of success. And we'll look at a different range, because nowadays there are several crowdfunding platforms, each with their own kind of unique way of doing it, pros and cons. And so which crowdfunding platform would be right to your needs? The third area of support is commissions and contracts. What do we mean by that? I mean public procurement. So increasingly government and local authorities are recognising that what they call the VCSE sector, voluntary community, I always get mixed up. Basically, they're looking at more third sector organisations, big local areas, to deliver basically services, public services. So depending on what your big local is doing, you may be able to get commissions and contracts from the local council to deliver paid work. It's a really great way of gaining income and moving beyond being dependent on grants and so on. So we'll talk about it in more detail. It's a complex area, but when you get it right, it can be very, very rewarding, not just for getting money, but for really building those local networks and working with local authorities. On to the next one, social investment. Social investment is basically repayable finance, or we talk about loans when we talk about equity. So loans are borrowing money and equity is selling shares in your organization. It's worth saying, you'll all know right now, with interest rates the way they are, social investment is a complicated space. That said, again, it's a really good way to kind of have a blended finance model that moves beyond grant funding. So it's still a very worthwhile area to investigate. So social investment is something we can look at with you if of interest. And then we talk about finally trade-based income. So trade-based income, again, if it sounds like a strange term, it really means just bringing in income from providing goods and services. So for example, if you run a community hall, you might hire out space to a local yoga group, you might have a co-working space, you might sell products, you might sell soft drinks in your cafe and food and so on. Again, they're all really good ways of bringing in income. And we've worked with multiple organizations over the years to look at different models of bringing in trade-based income. On that note, Abby, can I hand back to you?
Thank you, Dan. So as part of, that was a long list of a lot of different ways that you can bring money into your plans. And so on the other side of our support, we are providing the online learning events. And these are designed as taster sessions that will help to build understanding of each topic and increase your confidence in these areas. It may be that coming onto one of these learning events will be just what you need to kind of take your plans away and kind of get on with them in your own areas. Or it may be that something that you've not heard or considered before. And so you're kind of getting an idea of how that might be effective in helping you to, deliver on your plans. And then that may be kind of opening a conversation with us further of how we can support you further in an area. Some of the topics that we'll cover, this is not an exhaustive list, but we know the first one that's going to be what is possible and kind of a general look at the funding landscape and really understanding what it is that's out there. And that will be TBC in January. So look out for some information on Workplace on that. We've also got things like bid writing, how to get commission ready, crowdfunding 101, financial management, that sort of thing. So we're still finalizing kind of the nuts and bolts, but we will have in the events calendar, I think that Helen mentioned, all of our learning events will start to pop up in there and on Workplace as well. So also these sessions, they'll run about an hour and a half. They're going to be interactive, have breakout rooms, encourage conversations within yourselves because your own experiences are really the best examples and that will resonate with you when you kind of leave the room. So it won't just be us kind of talking about one thing at you for a while. Really want to get you kind of hands-on a bit in these short sessions. So yeah, I think that's as much as we want that we want to take talking about what we can offer, but I think we'll hand back over to Helen and we'll take some questions from yourselves. So thanks.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Dan. That was really, really helpful. I'm just going to check back on Workplace to see if we've had any questions come through on there. I've had one come through to me via the chat. Some big local areas are finding match funding for future asset projects. Some are wanting funding for small arts and gardening projects. What experience do you have with the larger projects and the smaller projects? Could you talk a bit more detail about that?
Sure. So again, we have a range of experience on kind of both ends of the spectrum. As Dan mentioned before, we've got, like I used to work for a crowdfunding platform and we worked primarily with small community organizations, may or may not have been incorporated, lots of smaller projects. And that's often a good kind of stepping stone to working towards bigger projects. And on the other side, within our team, we have people who have who have direct experience in raising millions of pounds for asset-based, Dan was one of them, asset-based projects and stuff. If Dan, you might want to talk a little bit about that. So within the team, we have a range of experience, and depending on what your needs are, then we would chat with you in the kind of scoping stage, and then understand what those needs are and make sure that you're matched with the right kind of experience and stuff for what it is that you want to do.
Thanks, I'm just building that. So there was a specific part of the question that I was really pleased to hear, which was around match funding. And yeah, it's really great that big locals are already thinking about, matching can be a really, really great way to kind of double the support for your project. And we've done it in all kind of ways. So one example is working with, £1 million national lottery grant from the Lottery Community Fund. We then went out to seek match funding from a range of different charitable trusts and foundations, and that match funding raised from kind of 20,000, 50,000 to 100,000. And we know that funders love match funding. They love to see that their initial funding, if you like, is gaining traction and attracting other funders into the same space. So we're really keen to support big locals pursue match funding as part of their overall strategy. In terms of, and I should also mention that we work very closely with Power to Change, and some of you might be aware of their Trading Up program, which was a really, really innovative way of specifically looking at match funding trade-based income. So for those of you who are looking at trade-based income, again, you can match fund grants, and that's more traditional. And then now there's some traction around match funding for trade-based income, and we're really keen to advocate for more of that from, say, government, from other funders and so on. And in terms of small and large projects, prior to working at Stir to Action, I was at Action Funder, which is another sort of crowdfunding platform, a bit like where Abby used to work, and they're brilliant at getting sort of 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 pound grants for those really hyper local community projects. So anything from 1 million national lottery down to, £3,000 for local projects, and anything in between, particularly as well looking at kind of government funding like Levelling Up, Shared Prosperity. So whatever your needs are at your big local, there is funding out there to match it, and that's exactly what we're here to help with.
Thank you, that was really helpful. I've had another question around crowdfunding, which you mentioned again. And I guess that it can be a bit daunting and feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the different types of fundraising. And could you just touch a bit more on crowdfunding in particular?
Yes, sure. I could speak for hours about this, but I know we don't have hours. So crowdfunding is a really fairly straightforward way to raise money. It can be a small amount or larger amount from your local community for a specific project or a specific part of a wider project. It's an easy thing to do in that it's all set up for you, usually online. There's platforms, the kind of crowdfunding sector has grown exponentially over the last 10 years. So the actual act of doing it and managing all of the money and all of that coming from lots of different sources is quite straightforward now. So it is a big piece of work in that you do have to plan around how to come up with a successful crowdfund, and I'll be doing a learning session on this, and as well as we can do more bespoke support about it. But most of the platforms are set up so that you don't pay if you're not successful. So it is a kind of low risk way to raise money and maybe test out your marketing message and your communications. It's a really good marketing activity in itself because it really raises awareness of what it is that you're doing. And again, back to the match funding question, there are many platforms that you can access specific match fund through crowdfunding. So whatever it is that you raise from the crowd, there are funders on that platform which will, put the match fund on top, right on there. So yes, I think that specifically with big local, from what I understand, what a lot of the big local areas are doing and their plans for kind of creating legacy after the big local program comes to an end in a couple of years. All of the stuff so far that I've seen, there's definitely elements of you know, opportunities that you could crowdfund for elements of those plans. And so it's, yeah, it's really, if you have any more questions specifically, just pop me a little message on Workplace or come and talk to us about your specific plans. But yeah.
And if I can just add to that, Abby, I think a really important thing to mention about crowdfunding is that it's fun. You know, yes, you have to get it right. There's some work up front, but it's a really, once your crowdfunding is live, it's such a brilliant way to involve your local community and kind of tell them what you're doing. And it's just a really, you know, you can be really inventive with the kind of rewards that you offer people for effectively investing in your community project, your big local. So it's brilliant. I should also add, I don't want to confuse the picture, but crowdfunding bears some similarity to community shares in that it's a way of raising money from your local community. The difference with community shares is that with crowdfunding, people are effectively, they're kind of giving you money because, you know, that's great. You know, people might give £10, £20, £100. With community shares, people are buying a stake, a piece of equity in your organization. And community shares can also seem daunting, but they have been incredibly important for the community sector over the last 10 years in allowing the community to be long-term involved in projects and helping your big local have long-term investment from the community. So really good example is that there are some farms even that we've worked with in recent years that have, you know, gone from being, you know, dependent on banks and so on to actually becoming community owned through a community share offer. And, you know, also community halls, there's all great examples of where community organizations have either done crowdfunders and or done a community share offer, and both really, really brilliant ways to get money from the local community. And we look forward to talking more about them in the sessions.
Thank you. I've got a question now around writing funding bids, and just will the support help with teaching bid writing skills needed to do that to a group of people, so for example workers and volunteers, or is it rather than just kind of helping one individual get one bid over the line? So I guess that's a question around, can the support, as well as helping individuals, actually offer that group training on bid writing?
Dan, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, very happy to. So the answer is we can do whatever your big local wants. So yeah, we would be very happy to. I'm a big believer in teaching as many people as possible. So if your big local wants to make, you know, have a session where there's 5 people rather than 1 person, or even 10 people, yeah, very, very happy to work with a small or a medium group to kind of teach those skills. And I think that, you know, if I go back 10 years, I didn't know the first thing about writing a fundraising bid, and it seemed like a daunting idea. I thought, oh, there must be really kind of secret language that people use. And there's a little bit of that. But again, once you get the swing of it, there are definitely some kind of tips and tricks. And once you get your head around those tips and tricks and understand what funders want to see, and yeah, it's you can pick up those skills fairly easily. So yeah, we would look forward to doing that, teaching a group of people, definitely.
And kind of linked to that question is around capacity as well, and obviously partnerships are volunteers. If kind of getting funding in is vital to a project going ahead, are you able to provide support around actually completing funding bids for areas if they need that?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a team of people who write fundraising bids. I'm obviously one of them, and where where it seems essential, there's maybe a real time pressure for the big local to get in their bid. And it's true, you know, most grant opportunities do have deadlines. Some of them are very long, some of them are quite short. Sometimes you find out about a funding opportunity and you realize, oh Christ, there's only a week to go before we need to submit this. And yet in those cases, absolutely, we can, as part of our 5 days of support, we can absolutely allocate some time to writing the bid itself, because that's what we do. So yeah, yes, a big thumbs up to that one.
Thank you. I've got a question in now from Marion Ransby, looking to when or if we get our toilet block conversion. One of the questions raised is about maintenance, staffing, etc. when we're gone. I note that Bournemouth Big Local got lottery funding for something like this. Is that something that you could look at with the areas?
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, you might want to come in on this as well, but I think that, again, it's looking at the plans that you have in place and the work that you've already done and the way that what you want to carry over and ensure and kind of with your legacy, leave the best possible opportunity for things to continue for a really long time. So we'll sit down and look at all of those things with you. And, you know, I think we'd be hard pressed to not be able to find some funding or grant opportunities that would enable you to do what it is that you're going to do. There's a lot of different grants out there. It's a huge landscape. So yeah, we can definitely look at those sorts of things.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting as well to hear more about those plans. I think, yeah, the lottery are a great example of a fund that provides both capital costs in some funding opportunities and revenue costs in others. Equally, we you know, when we talk about long-term sustainability, I think Abby mentioned the business planning, because it's really what funders really want to see is that there are plans in place for eventually for these projects to be not always dependent on grant funding. So we really want to work with you to look at this mix of income generation, community shares, grant funding, you know, and so on to hopefully make your project last forever. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got another question in from Roger from Lawrence Western, so I'll just read that one out. Are you able to review a project's drawn up fundraising program? So for example, if there's a major application in progress to Community Shares Booster Fund, but they also want to supplement with other funding, maybe crowdfunding that engages and raises supporters, or look at crowdfunding proposals to improve it, would you be able to kind of, I guess, review that fundraising strategy for that project and offer suggestions?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a really important opportunity to be able to review your whole funding mix. And it's nice to hear that you have kind of a few different ideas of how you can raise money from different sources. So yeah, we'd absolutely be happy to review that. We can review business plans, as Dan mentioned as well, which often funders want to see and support you on those. So yeah.
And a gold star to that question, if I mention the Community Shares Booster Fund, which we are big fans of. So for those who don't know, the Community Shares Booster Fund is a really great scheme run by Co-ops UK that allows people to apply for development grants of around £5,000 to prepare your community share offer. And then there's kind of match funding available up to £25,000 if your community share to support to match fund your community share offer. So again, that's something we'd absolutely look at. We really encourage big locals to consider that, because just such a brilliant program to get additional money. And we talked about match funding at the start, so we've almost gone full circle.